Nope.
That's fine.
You guys in here, but I just cut Sam off and it was the greatest thing ever. But hello to all you wonderful and unique beings. It is Tuesday, November 14th, and we're here to talk sports. I'm not waiting for Sam anymore because he always messes it up. And we'll do so every Tuesday to show you all. And we also want to show love to all those that are listening or tuning in on YouTube right now. We appreciate all the love that we are getting. With that, obviously, we would like to see increased numbers, but we're newbies at this. Even though I've watched streaming forever, you would have thunk that I would have done it a long time ago. But anyway, today
we're here now.
What happened?
And that's what we're here now, and that's what's important, Brandon.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Today we're just gonna get we got no real headlines. There wasn't really any headlines outside of the game, so we'll get a little more time to talk about the games, our dubs, our L's. We'll get to my power ranking. We'll also get to what our records are at this point in time between Sam and myself, and then also those that have been participating on Instagram. If you haven't, definitely go follow us on Instagram at Chasing Points Podcast. This is what we are. This is what we do. So you can be a part of the record or lack thereof record for those following on IG. We'll get into our picks this week as well, and then we'll talk a little controversy. And by little, I mean a lot of controversy in college football by former head coach, former player himself, and head coach of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh. But anyway, with that being said, we'll get right into the rest of the intro here. Now to introduce the most dominant tag team from the East, the brains of the group, our numbers cruncher. He's the advisor, and Mr. Plain, Sam. How you doing?
Mr. Plain?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's rough. Okay, here I am. Mr. Plain,
I'm going to force Sam out of his shell one way or another, and because he had this thing, if you guys listened, what do you mean what shell? Well, if I'm the advisor, I'm not supposed to have a certain energy. You don't remember you said that?
Yeah,
I keep these seats, Sam. Yes, I keep them. My point exactly. Moving on, the other half of this duo, it's me. I'm just here so I don't get fined. It's episode 115 of the Chasing Points podcast. Sam, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? Another beautiful day in paradise. Another primetime Jets game that the whole nation had to watch. I didn't even want to watch it. I can't imagine that the average football fan without a rooting interest in either of these teams did, but here we are. It's 2023.
To be fair, I did not watch it at all. There was not 1 second of that game that I chose to watch because I did not watch it, not one bit, because I could care less.
We'll skip that game. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I'll tell you what happened. Jets lost.
Jets lost. Yeah, I knew that was the outcome. Unfortunately, I think we both chose the Jets to actually win, and this is exactly why I don't really choose the Jets. I have a friend of the show. She is a diehard Jets fan. You actually met her last year very briefly when we went to the Jets game. And every time she asked me what's the chances of the Jets winning, and most of the time my answer are you're not. And so she got super excited when she saw this week of us picking the Jets for Sunday Night Football. And
I was going to text you last night like this. Do we want to rethink this? And I didn't. I just let it ride. And we both got that wrong. Can I tell you really quick? I've been saying like my 5-year-old's been getting into sports a little bit, and he's, his favorite team is the Jets, just like Daddy, he says. So the last 2 weeks have been primetime games. So he hasn't been able to stay up and watch them, nor does he really pay 100% attention. Again, he's 5. But then having to wake or in the morning, telling him when he asks who won last night, and then telling him the last 2 weeks that the Jets lost, he gets so upset. He has no idea the inner workings of this team, or that none of this is surprising, but it's really just hard to watch at a 5-year-old. It's really hard.
You've had sound parenting up until this point.
Up until this point, I have to rethink things here.
Until exposing to your son to the Jets. So you've been stellar. There's been no
trying, man.
Here. You slip. Sometimes you slip and you fall and you can't get up. It's okay. We're here now.
I do not want to put a damper on what was a great week 10, though. Some great games, and we're going to get
Oh
into.
No. To be clear, nothing that the Jets do is going to put a damper on anything else that happens in the NFL. Just to be very, very clear. So no matter what we say about this, there's going to be no damper. It might be for you, but I
just mean the podcast.
You because you're probably used to this so much at this point. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, it happened, whatever, you know.
Yeah, this is like my September 20th feeling. So get this in November is great.
To be fair, the best part about the Jets, the Raiders playing was Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers hanging out prior to the game. That was like the best part of it. So,
what do you think they got into on the strip on Saturday night? You know what I mean? Like, it's probably a fun night.
I'm sure they definitely drank. I'm sure they Devontae showed him a couple spots. And got him into a couple of spots if Aaron decided to go out. But again, they don't really need to go out or they probably just got a ride out. I don't know. It looked like the one was driving, but I could be speculating. Who knows? I hope they weren't. But
be safe.
Who knows?
Be safe, kids.
Antonio Pierce is 2-0. There's that too. Let's get directly into our dubs and our L's. And my immediate dub is the Cleveland Browns. So it's a team that Dame and myself have loved from a distance for so long, and we're betting with each other, friendly betting with each other on when they would become a household name again. And every season we were like, they got it. And we watched them kind of build up. Now, Dame's a Commanders fan. I know he's going to hate me saying that. I'm an Eagles fan. And we rooted for them from afar. We also have our own favorite players and some mutual favorite players. And to see where they have come from being that terrible team not too long ago and seeing them compete with the likes of the Ravens and the likes of the Bengals and actually having a fighting chance is amazing to see, and I'm sure it feels great if you're a Cleveland Brown fan in general. So they were able to come back against the Ravens on Sunday. And I don't know, before I continue, did you watch any of the game?
I mean, on Red Zone, it was on most of the morning or afternoon. Yeah, it was a great game, back and forth, man. It was great.
So I have the ticket, so I was watching the multicast, so I kept switching to the sound of that screen, but watching Deshaun scramble and giving glimpses of what he once was, seeing Myles Garrett be completely unblockable
again,
no matter what they did. It was so good to see what happened. It sucked to see what happened with Lamar and the team. There's a couple of plays that I know they wish they had back, especially the 2 picks that he had. Definitely wish that they had that back. But that Browns defense, after that win, it's hard for me to not say that they're not in contention to get into the playoffs and not in contention to be a vital player in the playoffs. Because that defense, as you and I know, Sam, defense wins championships. They got a defense. And they, with Newsom being able to capitalize on Garrett pressing that pocket and pressuring the quarterback to get rid of it and putting in compromising position, they have some DBs back there that will take it to the house. So I absolutely love what was done by the Browns. So kudos to them. It's really good to see Amari Cooper actually be relevant. I didn't choose him this year. He was on my fantasy team last year. I didn't choose him this year because I had no idea what product they were going to put out there. I knew the defense was going to show up, but that was only half of the problem. So we're not.
Hey, man.
So
they're 6-3 in a pretty deep division. As you know, didn't expect the Steelers to be. I think they're 6-3 too. Didn't expect them to be where they are. They're there. I mean, I still think when it's all said and done, the Ravens and the Bengals will be at the top of this division. That said, you got to play the games, and no matter who it is, I've always said, like, if you're playing a division game, you just look to split. You know, no matter what it is, these teams know each other really well, and Deshaun looked like, you know, not necessarily like vintage Deshaun Watson, but he looked as good as he has in the last year and a half, right? So, and it was a lot of back and forth, game-winning field goal. There were 5 game-winning field goals yesterday. That's just wild. They stormed back from 31-17 in the fourth quarter. The way that Deshaun got out of that pocket and threw that lobbed it to Elijah Moore for that touchdown. Like it was an exciting game. They got the ball back with like 5 minutes left, and Deshaun did his thing. It was back and forth, and yeah, Ravens want some of those plays back, but again, it's a National Football Team league, and that's what happens when good teams play each other. And yeah, I don't think it's the last we'll see of either of these teams for sure.
Well, speaking of good teams, you have the Niners as your dub.
Yeah, it's both these teams had a bye last week, the Jaguars and the Niners, and there was a lot of talk. What Niners team is this? What Niners team will we see? They just dropped 3 straight as they went into the bye, came out ready to play on the road in Jacksonville, 34-3. It was just an impressive showing. Brock Purdy looked like, shook off those last 3 games and had a pretty good game. Almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. The CMC didn't score a touchdown, to end that crazy consecutive game streak, but it was fine. Had
the record if he scored the touchdown.
Yeah, and you want to see things like that, but it doesn't mean he didn't. I mean, he still ran for like 100 yards.
Well, they gave him multiple opportunities to try to score down in that zone, and he just couldn't. So,
yeah, but still, it's a hell of an accomplishment, hell of a player in this league. Kittle had a huge game. Overall, just it was a big statement win for this Niners team. I think they needed it, and it was an impressive win, especially this Jaguar team that I think they have the same record, right? Did not perform nearly as well. Trevor Lawrence only had 162 yards passing, only 59 yards on the ground. They were able to stop Travis Etienne, and we weren't quite sure what Chase Young we were going to see. I know you and I were pretty hopeful for the setup for him, right? You're playing on the other end of your college teammate, Nick Bosa.
Well, and speak for yourself. I wasn't hopeful for him at all because I don't want to hear the 49ers do anything. So I was not hopeful.
That's fair. Okay. Well, Chase Young's career in the last 4 years or however long it's been in the NFL has not worked out the way we all kind of thought it would. And, it looked a little different today. And the defense was in the Jaguars' face all game. It was a pretty dominant performance defensively as well. And yeah, this Niners team looks like it's getting back on track and a pretty big win on the road in Jacksonville.
Well, I'd say, of course, it looks like they're getting back on track. You get your Hall of Fame left tackles back, which shores up your protection on your blind side. So it makes it a little bit easier knowing that you're not going to get hit on that side and can be comfortable on that. That was a huge part of Purdy looking like what he once did at the beginning of the season. You also get Deebo Samuel back, which the statistics show when you have both of them there that he is pretty hot. Without him and without these guys, that's it, right? But also, I think the bigger takeaway from the Niners team was their defense, because their defense has not looked like their defense of last year. This week looked like that. They were able to get to the quarterback. They made Trevor Lawrence look like a child, which is crazy. Now you have people questioning Trevor Lawrence, which I actually have a question for you after this, but we'll get into that. So I'd say the biggest takeaway was the defense of them showing up against a team that is considered to be a contender, definitely by both your and my standard, and a lot of people's standard, believe that the Jags can do something. But I might as well go into my loser while I have that, or the L here, is because it's the Jags. They literally were the hottest team coming into this. They had a whole bye week, time to prepare, time to rest, get everybody back. They're on their home field and absolutely get stomped out. For a team that is supposed to be a contender, as I just mentioned, They look like pretenders. They have people questioning what this team actually is because they did just face a contender and the Niners, and they didn't put up a fight at all. They got embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassed. I don't know what the game plan was supposed to be. Don't know what they were supposed to be doing, but they didn't even show up to that game. And these are the type of games that you need to show up and show out for. So I don't want to hear when people are talking about how tough the AFC is. We know the AFC is tough, but this is an AFC opponent that is a part of that tough AFC and just got ran over by the Niners. So my question, because this is a kind of a prisoner of the moment, but also what I see with my eyes, and I'm just curious to see your thoughts. CJ Stroud is considered to be well within the MVP race right now with the performance that he's putting together in his rookie year. Would you take CJ right now over Trevor Lawrence?
You know, I really like Trevor Lawrence, and I was banking on a big year for him fantasy wise and just in general. I thought we talked about the end of last year and in the preseason, like the Jags were going, especially how they ended last year. I know they lost in the playoffs to a hobbled Pat Mahomes, but you know, they're the Chiefs. They end up winning the Super Bowl, rightfully so. They're a very good team. But you know, those steps were there for this Jaguars team to get better. And you thought, okay, now you have Calvin Ridley, hasn't played in a long time, but Calvin Ridley's a great weapon. Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. I mean, ETN just had a really good run of a couple games. I thought Trevor Lawrence would be better this year. That said, I think he's been a fine quarterback. Maybe, you know, in the fantasy football world, there's a lot of disappointment there, especially where people took him. But it's made me kind of question, all right, well, we're so quick to anoint this king.
Thank you.
And we've been and we've talked about it, you know, and you've been rightfully had the brakes on him a lot longer than I have. But it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, he's 6'6". He's got, you know, national championships. He's supposed to have all this talent, and he does. I don't think we question the talent. I just, you know, it's really hard to play quarterback in this league, and it's just kind of crazy the paradigm in this game, right? You have Brock Purdy, literally the last pick in the draft, and you have Trevor Lawrence, the first pick in the draft, the generational talent, the best quarterback we've seen since Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, whatever that is, and it's just, it hasn't come to fruition yet. And I think, you know, he certainly doesn't light up the stat page, and maybe he doesn't need to, but we haven't seen it yet from Trevor Lawrence.
He does need to now at this point because of all the hype that's
around
him.
I think you need to win games. I think you need to win games. And I think you need to win games like this.
Absolutely.
And it's fine if you only put up 200 passing yards, but you can't turn the ball over 4 times. And you know,
is it fine if you only put 200 passing yards? Because we're talking about, they're out here talking about Kenny Pickett, who only put up 167 yesterday, and they won. So that's not too far off from Trevor Lawrence, and we're scrutinizing him for not putting up, right? Trevor Lawrence is the first overall pick, as you just mentioned. If we went down the street and asked somebody if they watched football, and they said no, they haven't watched football, and we showed them that game yesterday, and we would ask them, who do you think was the first overall pick? I guarantee they would have said Brock Purdy. Right? And then no situation should that happen. Yes, we obviously understand we're human. We will all have days off. It just is what it is, right? But even when you have those days off, there's got to be something else that gets your team there. They didn't show up. And it always starts with the quarterback, Sam. They didn't show up. Now, to be fair, that Jags defense didn't show up either. Yeah. So while we're sitting over here beating up on Trevor, we need to beat up on them too, because they didn't show up at all. That whole team didn't show up. So it starts with Doug, it goes to Trevor, and it goes to that whole defense. Like, it just did not show up at all. And they basically said, okay, you guys thought that we were good, and we don't know what to tell you because we're not quite sure where we are now. Okay.
I know when Peterson's gotten those questions in the last couple weeks about, Trevor Lawrence's, I guess, lighting up the stat page,
Mhm.
that he hasn't needed to, right? Again, we talked about ETN had 3 games where he had multiple touchdowns. That was a Jaguars record. I don't know many running backs that have been able to do that. They have a really good defense. They have a good defense. I don't know if it's really good, but Josh
Yeah,
Allen,
good defense.
they have a good defense. Um, and you have really good receivers, and you haven't really needed Trevor Lawrence to be Peyton Manning or to do that. When you have games like this, and you need a little bit more, and you can't turn the ball over 4 times, especially against a team like this.
So I guess the answer to my question is that you take CJ right now.
Oh, right now. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of this until Chris Sims said it last night on the pregame to the NBC Sunday night game. Like, CJ Stroud's having the best rookie season a quarterback's ever had.
Really?
And
ever.
I guess it's and I know I've heard that a couple times today, but I haven't compared numbers, but I haven't really even thought to think about it. But the game-winning drives he's played 9 games this year. He's had like 8 really good games.
And only 2 interceptions.
Yeah, you're only right. 2. Because wasn't it like 6 or 7 games in a row before he
didn't throw one?
Even had one? Yeah.
Man, this yesterday was his second one that he's thrown this whole year.
And they're doing it without a running game too, because I know Singletary had a good game yesterday, but before that,
Pierce, which was very, very weird because they brought up their kicker from the practice squad, and they did this. I forgot the move that they made, but when Pierce went down by bringing this person up, they wouldn't have had a kicker if they didn't do a roster move earlier in the week. So they would have been without a kicker for that final kick, which obviously would have meant a whole lot in that situation.
Last week, Dario Gumbawale was the emergency kicker, and he kicked some extra points and a kickoff. Yeah, it was incredible. It's Danny Amendola's brother, Matt Amendola. Didn't know that. But yeah, another game-winning. Just not a game-winning kick, but just a good week good week for kickers, I guess. But yeah, I take CJ Stroud. Oh yeah, totally. And I didn't see any of that coming. I mean, I liked CJ Stroud more than Bryce Young coming into the draft, but I didn't think.
I don't think anybody really saw this outside of CJ. So CJ saw what he saw, and the Texans, I guess, technically did since they picked him. But that is also my dub of this week, as well as the Texans, just because of what they've done. They are, outside of Josh Dobbs, they are the other big surprise in the league this year. Again, being led by a rookie who is in the MVP conversation and balling out of his mind. That defense has played also out of their mind, being able to punch Joe Burrow in the mouth when they needed to. There was a huge drop by Boyd, which would have 100% gave the Bengals the W, but that's not how it played out. But this is why you play the games. And also in the next drive when the Texans got the ball back, Tank Dell dropped a huge pass that could have been something let down, but it ultimately didn't affect the outcome. So, I mean, it's a game of inches. It's you make a catch, you don't make a catch, it happens. The teammates of Boyd were consoling him after. Mixon was like the one that was by him this whole side, walking with him into the tunnel to comfort him. But to be able to go head-to-head against Joe Burrow, who, as we know, the Bengals had a huge resurgence and are out here trying to make their way back up the ladder of contention, and they were able to silence them and beat them in the last few seconds, and that is huge. It's a W is a W. As we've said so many times on here, it doesn't matter how it looks, a W is a W. At the end of the day, you're trying to get yourself to a better position, better playoff spot to help you out, and they are moving themselves up the ladder, and CJ is 100% in that MVP conversation.
Yeah, it was uncharacteristic of Tyler Boyd to drop that right in his hand. I mean, it was high, but it was right in his hands. And
John Madden said, if the ball touches your hands, you need to come down with it.
I'm not, uncharacteristic is what I said, because he's not a guy that, he's not Mr. Dependable, but and he had a big touchdown earlier in the game. But to rest it just on Tyler Boyd is a fool's errand too, because there were a lot of opportunities. Burrow had a couple picks. It's just the game got away, and they stormed. They got to where they needed to be, and they just couldn't finish it. And that's testament to this again, to D'Amico Ryans and this this hungry team. Yeah,
you said Joe Burrow's pick, which is a great point, because there was actually a pick at the end of the game where Joe Burrow threw a pick, Texans get it, and then CJ threw his second interceptions, as I said, and it allowed the Bengals to even have a chance to be and because if CJ doesn't throw that pick at the end, they can run out the clock and the Bengals lose by 2 scores. So there was a chance of it not even looking like it did at the end or coming down to a field goal. But again, things happen. So as you said, it looked way different than what, if you watch it, it was a phenomenal game. To close this out for Dubs, you have the Vikings.
Yeah, I just you mentioned Josh Dobbs as like the winner of the year, right? The storyline, like just a hell of a performance, and they were saying like he didn't even know where the locker room was.
Yeah,
and it's one of these things where he just had a crazy performance. He was doing it all different kinds of ways. You're without. Oh yeah, by the way, you're without the best wide receiver or one of them in football, and Justin Jefferson too, and you just had a big performance against the Saints. I know Derek Carr got hurt, and it was like YOLO Jameis Winston time, but still, like, you got to win these games. And here's a team that, just thought, okay, they made some noise after having an 0-3 start, and now Kirk Cousins, who's was having a really good year, and now he's gone. And now, do we just pack it in and try to get, a good draft spot or whatever? Do we sell off some pieces? And here we are, a team that I think if the season ended right now, they'd be in the playoffs. They're right there. And Josh Dobbs has this team looking pretty good. And it's pretty exciting to watch. It's a big win for, again, a guy who got there like 10 days ago and has 2 wins under his belt with his team. You're giving a really funny face. Let it go.
The Eagles are working out free agent linebacker Anthony Barr.
He's a free agent?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that. I just they need linebacker help, so I like it. So that's why I was doing it. It just kind of caught me off guard, and I was like,
I thought it was in reaction to Joshua Dobbs and the Vikings trying to make the playoffs here.
No, I'm gonna be like what Dobbs has been doing. He's doing this with just really Hawkinson, really, and JJ is not back yet, and he's about to come back. He was a early scratch in the day, but it looks like he is very, very close to coming back. So just to see what this team could be like with him, there is no confusion that Josh Dobbs is smart. There's no confusion whatsoever. The Jets could have got him for a 6th-round pick. They didn't, and they stuck with Zach Wilson. Jonathan Gannon, punk ass, got rid of him and said they wouldn't and traded him off. So I wish this young man gets everything that he wants to get. And I hope that the Vikings make the playoffs over the Cardinals so he can laugh at the Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon in his decision making. But
I will say this. I will say the silver lining in that, and I was thinking about that after we talked about this the other day, and just Jonathan Gannon and all of that, is Kyler looked pretty good yesterday. At least Josh Dobbs is playing. I know they lied. I know. But
no. Don't I know me? Who'd they play?
They play the Falcons, but look at the Falcons' schedule to end the year. They could easily win the South. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, they could easily win the South, but the Falcons are not a great team. And Kyler, that was basically a preseason game for Kyler, if we're going to be serious about it. So we'll see what Kyler actually does going forward.
There's certainly a lot more talent on this Falcons team than the Cardinals right now. But that said, you got to use the talent on your team. So
yeah, you do.
Who knows what Arthur Smith's going to do?
That's a very damn valid point, Sam. Speaking of talent, or lack thereof being used, your L is the Jets and the lack of offense. You want to? I'll give you the floor for this one. I'm just going to sit back and relax.
Yeah, we talked about it enough at the top. A friend asked me this morning, so you think Rodgers is coming back in December? And I said no. And she said, why? I said, well, we're 4-5. We're a playoff team. I think we're a playoff talented team, defensively at least. We're 4-5, and we lost 2 games we could have won, and our next 2 games are against the Bills and at Buffalo and Miami. So there's that.
Comes back, and you guys are nowhere near playoff contention, which it looks like will be the case. There's no reason to back out there, even if you are in contention, because that O-line is terrible and is the exact reason why he tore his ACL in the first place, is because they couldn't protect him.
Yeah.
Was that not the theme throughout Hard Knocks? Is the O-line protecting Aaron, the O-line protecting Aaron, the O-line. There was a whole talk about that throughout the whole offseason, and literally a few plays in, boom, here we are. And it proceeds to be still the same thing, right? If they can't protect a future Hall of Famer, what makes you think that they're going to be able to protect Zach Wilson? Like, it just makes no sense. And I feel bad for Garrett Wilson so much. I just do, because I really, really love this young man and the talent that he absolutely has. He's humble throughout the whole time. And looking at those press conferences, I know what he wants to say, Sam. I know what he wants to say. But he's doing the right thing, and he essentially watched what happened to Zach last year for not saying the right thing. So he has a prime example of what not to do. But I know every time he gets up there, if you read the pain in his eyes, he's saying, somebody save me. I need to be safe.
I think, especially when Coach Saleh comes out today, like, Zach's played pretty good. We're not making a change. And, okay, I'm sure the rest of the locker room is saying, all right, well, something's got to give. What's the plan here? Because, it's like Nathaniel Hackett didn't even realize that Breece Hall was on the team until, like, the end of the game. So
can we talk about Saleh for a second before we go?
Yeah.
I've openly said that I've been a fan of Robert Saleh, but this season has made me look at him in a different light, because he's talked a lot this season.
Yeah.
He's talked a lot this season about how the defenses have shut down good quarterbacks and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But yet the team is still losing, and you're still putting out a terrible product offensively, and you're lying to the media. You're lying to the fan base. And more importantly, you're lying to the guys that are right there that you're immediately affecting every week, week in, week out. You're lying to your offense by saying Zach is the best option, when we all can see that Zach is not the best option. There's been many opportunities, and me, Sam, I've defended Zach to a certain extent and say give him a chance, allow him to grow.'s now had a chance to grow. I've watched him. He's had Aaron in his ear. He's had time to do this. And to be fair, this was not supposed to be for him. But Hackett turned around and made the offense to him, who is also another problem, because his teams have not scored touchdowns for quite some time, and he's only scored one offensive touchdown, I believe, in quite some time. But you got Trevor Siemian there. Put him in. Give him a chance. Let your team see something different, because they seemed to have a spark last year when you benched Zach. This year, the difference is Zach is saying all the right things and being upbeat and doing that. That's great. Zach's not winning your games. Put somebody else in. Because I'm telling you right now, Robert, if you don't do that, you're going to lose your job very, very soon.
I've been waiting weeks for you to say this, because I know you've been a little bit more like, give the kid time. And I mean,
the time has expired.
So you didn't watch the game yesterday, and that's fine. There was this drive where Zach scrambles out, makes something out of nothing, runs down the sideline. He ends up barely stepping out of bounds, but he dove in to score a touchdown. And then they reviewed it, and he was out at like the 3. Mm-hmm. But it was a gutsy play. Like, he he was just like, again, YOLO, I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
And it was, and then what happened? It was you're at the goal line, right? You're on the 3rd yard line, and CJ Uzama gets a penalty on what would have been a Breece Hall touchdown. Gets a penalty, another penalty, and then there was something else happened. Oh, there was a drop to Michael Carter. There was another penalty, and then you settle for a field goal. And I tell my friends, I'm like, this is the quintessential Jets drive. Like, this is it. This is the season right here. Like, this is just how it goes. One step forward, a million steps back. At least we were able to salvage 3 points out of it. But like, this happens way too much, and it's just wasting another great defensive performance by this team. And again, you're playing there's talent on this Raiders team. We just talked about Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. Just on the offensive side of the ball, at least there's a lot of talent too. Max Crosby again. There's talent on this team, but you're wasting this Jets defense and this performance here because your inability to just be able to drive the ball down the field is something that we've been missing since Ryan Fitzpatrick was our quarterback. Maybe Josh McCown. Like, it's been so long. Like, it's just, why is it so hard? Like, I just get envious of these quarterbacks that can just, put up 300 yards and a couple touchdowns and protect the football. Why is that so hard? It's hard. And so, like, that's my mindset every week where you're, like, bashing these quarterbacks that can't quite get over the hump, because I'd love to just be at the hump. You know what I mean? Like, and Zach Wilson is so far from that spot and just being able to move an offense down the field. This team in general.
You'll be there next year. You'll be fine. I promise you. You'll be all right.
I hope so. I hope so. We'll see.
We don't need to beat a dead horse anymore.
Real quick though, with the Raiders, Antonio Pierce looks like a head football coach, and this team's playing for him. And he did before, during warmups, he went to everyone that was on the field warming up and dapped him up and like said hello to him. And it was just like one of these things where it's like, you're a pro football coach. And hopefully that all works out for him. Yeah.
Says you last week, get more player coaches. That's what you need. Maybe they need a player coach in Los Angeles because Brandon Staley ain't it. He hasn't been it. Ain't gonna be it.
I feel like we could just name every episode of our podcast for the last 2 years. Brandon Staley ain't it.
It's so mind-boggling to me. And you know what I've said about Herbert. I believe Herbert has a talent. I believe that in certain games that he has not allowed his team, he hasn't showed his true potential. And then there's games like yesterday where he absolutely balls out and says, I'm not the problem, everybody. It's not me. It's not me. And it's not Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen has actually been healthy this year. And again, is one of the, if not the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL, because he does not get his shine at all, because he's on this Chargers team that all we keep talking about is, you would think you'd be talking about Herbert, which we're talking about Herbert, but anytime you bring up the Los Angeles Chargers, the other person you're bringing up is Brandon Staley. You're not even bringing up Eckler. You're not bringing up Allen. You're not bringing up the defensive side, Bosa or Mack. You're bringing up the head coach, because he sucks. And he continues to show that he does, and his team continues to suffer. At what point, I'm telling Sam, I don't think he's head coach next year.
No.
I really 100% do not believe he is the head coach next year. And the way things are happening in Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh ends up like, hey, you guys need a coach. There's going to be a lot of people clamoring for that Chargers head coaching seat, because it's going to be vacant, because Lord, what I just don't get it. But also, to be fair, that Charger defense, you spent so much money on that defense, and
You're a defensive coach.
Exactly. It looks like Swiss cheese out there. Swiss cheese. It's got so many holes, and it's bad. I don't understand how you have that many holes when you got Khalil Mack, you got Nick Bosa, right? It's Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa. I always confuse the idiots anyway. You have my boy Derwin James back there, like
Asante Samuel
Jr. It just makes no.
It's got to be a scheme thing, then, right? I mean, Khalil Mack is clearly not prime Khalil Mack, but he's still a hell. I mean, didn't he have like 5 sacks earlier this year?
Yes,
and again,
absolutely going off. So
he's clearly still a talented defensive end in this league. Like, there's no doubt about that. It's got to be a scheme thing, and you're the quote defensive genius. Like, there were. You remember how Sean Payton was clamoring and positioning himself for this job in the offseason? It didn't work out because this Dean Spanos didn't want to fire Brandon Staley. Well, I think you have no choice now. I don't know who the next coach is going to be. But
start not calling coaches geniuses just because they have
I'm down.
a few good seasons or whatnot. Because
let's talk about the genius tag. There's Adam Gase. He's an offensive genius.
Yep.
Josh McDaniels. He's an offensive genius, right? Brandon Staley is a genius. I think the only geniuses that can be geniuses are Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan.
And I was also going to say about Sean McVay, like, he won a championship, but they went all in, and since they went all in, I don't really see his genius right now either. So I don't know, man. I just would stop. I would just say they're really good at football. I would stop calling them geniuses.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Cliff Kingsbury, he's a genius, right?
Right? Who was the head coach of the Bears when they had the greatest defense ever? That's a genius. That's a genius.
Oh, the defensive coordinator for the '85 Bears?
Yeah.
Oh, that was Buddy Ryan.
I'm sorry. He also had a great defense where in Philadelphia, right? He's also a legendary coach. Okay.
His son was really good defensive coordinator too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was a part of the second greatest defense in
the NFL.
The Ravens.
I think
so. Oh, okay. So yeah, and we're not calling them geniuses, but yet they have two of the greatest defenses ever, and people on the staff. You have actually one of the coordinators. He's a defensive coordinator for the Giants now. You have people all over the place.
Wink,
yeah. So those are the people that we should be talking about. But we give these young guys, because they're young and up and coming, that Kellen Moore, genius offensive mind, and his offenses do phenomenal. Until they don't. So
just saw this quote from Brandon Staley about Justin Herbert going 27 of 40 for 323 and 4 touchdowns. Justin was fantastic tonight. He gave us a chance.
Yeah, because
they scored 38 points. He gave us a chance.
Yes, because I didn't. He gave us a chance because I didn't. So that's it. Whatever. Your last L is the Bengals. I know we could
man. I mean,
a little bit.
We talked about it a little bit. That was a tough game, and you could put the Ravens right there too. I thought of a lot of different teams to put there. It was just, you're gonna. I don't think any less of the Bengals, and necessarily, if anything, more of. Again, just man, these Texans are good, and CJ Stroud is not only good, he's elevating everyone around him, and that's something that Joe Burrow does now. Look, I get it. Joe Burrow's got a great running back and one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league. I'm not, but there's this Texans team special, and I don't know if the Bengals didn't expect to be in a tough game because it's the National Football League, and I don't think that's the case at all, but they should have won this game, and they didn't.
Why you play any given Sunday.
That's it.
When we saw the schedule this year, when we saw the Eagles playing the Jets, we thought it was going to be a good game. Then Aaron Rodgers went down, and then we thought the Eagles were going to blow the Jets out, and then the Jets won that game, right? Any given Sunday, anybody can win. So I don't care what it looks like, what it's supposed to be. If you don't show up, or to your point, if you kind of just like, okay, well, we show up and we just think it's not going to be something, you're going to get ran over because there's a bunch of professionals on the other end that are hungry as hell. And that team is young and they have a point to prove to everybody. CJ has a point to prove to people that, hey, you didn't believe in me. Here's what it is. They talked about his test scores. They talked about how not great he was with that. And he said, I'm a football player, and that's what I'm great at. And he's shown that. D'Amico came from San Fran, former football player himself. He's first-time head coach. He's out here showing what his defense. Brandon Staley, this is what a defensive-minded head coach looks like when he has a good defense. Go look at the Texans because that's what it's supposed to look like for your team. And they're doing it with young people, and it was a team that last year nobody believed could do anything. So pay attention.
Can I say something real quick about
Absolutely.
Texans to your Jaguars point earlier? Jaguars are 6-3. Texans, who again no one thought would be here, 1 game out.
Yep.
1 game. Yep.
It's going to get interesting very, very quick. So what is also interesting in my mind is my power ranking. So it has definitely changed this week. Some names still familiar, definitely a new name here, and they deserve to have their respect. So I'm going to give it to them. At 5, they dropped down from the 2 spot from last week. The Ravens, because of that loss on Sunday. They should have won. I'm not saying it is an easy game because it was no easy game. There's no easy games in my mind in football, but they should have won. And at times when Lamar is in those big games, which has been a knock on him, and the only knock that I ever had on Lamar myself is when he gets in these huge games, it looks like the moment is too big for him. And that's the only thing that I've seen thus far in the NFL that I can say is a knock. I believe 100% he just needs that one big game that's going to get him over that threshold and be like, okay, I'm here, right? But until then, every time it's one of those games that could separate you from everybody, and this game would have done it, Sam. It would have separated the Ravens and put them in another tier, and I honestly would have believed that they would have been and remained in my top 3. They would have remained in my top 2. They might even been 1 if they won this game. But being that they didn't, they dropped down because they absolutely could have done this. And I'm just too, I want to say too skeptical of who this Ravens team is at times, because sometimes they look like absolute world beaters. And then at times they look like they can't even tie their own laces. And that's sad to me.
I think it's interesting. That's a great point because we talk about trying not to be too overreactive week to week, but that's pretty much every team in the National Football League. I would say, you probably take the Eagles out of that conversation because they've continued to win games, even though it's been ugly at times. Yeah. But we have this stretch where. I'll definitely say I thought the Niners were the best team in football. I don't see how they're going to lose many games. Well, they lost 3 in a row. Then, the Bengals are back. And again, I think we still really like this Bengals team, but they should have won that game, even though they started the season awful and then they had a great stretch. So it's just, and then last week I said, hey, we haven't given the Ravens enough love. Here we are. We spent half the pod talking about the Ravens. And then again, they lost a game they should have won. And so it's the National Football League, to your point. And I think you could pretty much say that about every team so far in the NFL.
Well, this is why my power rankings has changed so much this year, more than last year. Last year was pretty stagnant for the most part. The top 2 teams remained the top 2 teams pretty much all year long. Like the first couple of weeks, it was kind of whatever. And then after that, it was Eagles and Chiefs. We knew all the way kind of through. Number 4 is the Niners. They were previously, higher ranked too, to Sam's point. This game was a big win for them, beating up the Jags, who we believe is a potential contender and were in my top picks not too long ago. But now the Jags are out. Niners are still at 4. This game was huge for them. And we'll see what happens. They have definitely a hard game against the Eagles coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. and they have some other harder games to go through, but a little easier schedule to allow themselves to get to where they have to go. So they should have some favorable wins ahead of them, allowing them to be in a contention position for sure. New to this list, the Lions, because they are 7-2, I believe, at this point in time, and they are absolutely they're not the same old Lions. We've watched what they have become, watching them on Hard Knocks. I want to give a shout out to Jared Goff and put some respect on his name, because I was definitely one of the people that called him a bum. And he has proved that he's not. And he proved my own theory that I go by all the time, Sam, which is sometimes you just need the right system. And he is in the right system for him. And they built this team around him. And the crazy thing is, every time you watch any of these major sporting programs, you don't hear his name talked about, but he is absolutely balling over there for the Lions and making sure that this team continues to go. So kudos to the Lions and what they're doing. They have absolutely built a juggernaut in an NFC North, and I believe they have a sustainable team that would be around for quite some time, and will be in the playoffs for the foreseeable future. At 2, excuse me, the Chiefs stay there. They had a bye week. They stay there. Eagles won. They stay there. They also had a bye week. And they play each other on Sunday night, coming out of the bye week. Or is it Monday night?
Monday night.
Yeah, stressful. Stressful. So you might see the stress on my face for those that are watching it live next week. Sam will definitely see that. I will definitely have some alcohol next to me to try to calm the nerves. But that is my power rankings this week. Your thoughts, Sam?
No, I don't disagree. I wonder where you'd have the Cowboys. I know they beat the brakes off a team they should have beaten the brakes off of and have completely owned this year.
The Cowboys, they could flirt with number 5 because they lost to the Niners and they lost to the Eagles. So 2 teams that are on there, they lost to both of them. They could flirt with 5 at this point in time, because again, the teams that they've beat aren't really anybody that they shouldn't have beat. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
Yeah, so that's why I would say they're 6, if anything, but they might be like 5A, to be honest, for the Cowboys. The Ravens lose another game like that, it is what it is. But also, the Cowboys just beat the hell out of the Giants, which I think we all kind of expected to happen anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's your power rankings.
All right, what's our records?
Here we go. Far. Hey, last week, or this week rather, excluding tonight's game, we both have Buffalo over Denver in Buffalo. But again, straight up, I went 9-4. This week, you went 7-6. So I did pick up 2 games. Instagram, only 7 wins this week. So got to pick that up. But, 85 total wins for Instagram. I am 93-63 so far, and you are 95-61. So I was able to pick up 2 games, but you still have a healthy lead there. So we'll see.
Well, doesn't look like it's going to change at all this week because Sam and I are pretty much spot on throughout this. But teams that have bye weeks for week 11 is the Falcons, the Colts, the Patriots, thank God, and the Saints also.
Oh my God! Yeah,
the Falcons.
The Patriots are going to lose.
All 4 of these teams, I'm very thankful that they all have a bye. That's less painful football that we have to watch this week.
Yeah. The Patriots were on that loser list for me, but I didn't. I want to talk about the Jets instead. Yeah. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
That's fair. Thursday night football. Bengals at Ravens. We both have Ravens. Steelers at Browns. We both have Browns. Raiders at Dolphins. Dolphins. Bears at Lions. Lions. Titans at Jags. Jags. Chargers at Packers. Chargers. Cards at Texans. Texans. Cowboys at Panthers. Cowboys. They better win big. Giants at Commanders. We both have Commanders. Bucks at Niners. Niners. Jets at Bills. At Sam's heart, he has the Jets, but we both have the Bills. Seahawks at Rams. Seahawks. Sunday night football game. Vikings at Broncos. Vikings. But I will tell you, this is the one that there's two. The last two games are the only ones that I
agree.
I could go either way. So Vikings at Broncos, we both have Vikings, but I could see the Broncos winning, especially if they win tonight when we're recording this against the Bills.
Yeah.
And then Monday Night Football, Eagles at Chiefs. Andy Reid is undefeated on after a bye week, and he's never lost to the Eagles. Never lost to the Eagles at all yet, too. So statistically, my mind says to go with the Chiefs, but I'm not doing that. So we both have the Eagles. So there's that.
I forgot about that data. And since I'm the data person, I may change my mind. But right now, I have the Eagles.
Okay. So he's supposed to be the advisor here, and this is crazy.
Well, you're the Andy Reid connoisseur, so yeah.
I am.
He is your football coach.
That is very, very true. That is very, very true.
Yeah.
So college football. I know we don't talk about this much. What's that?
Anything going on in college football nowadays?
Yes. That's what I'm explaining. Leave me the hell alone. Jim Harbaugh. You might know his brother John. He's the coach of the Ravens. But Jim, former NFL coach, also former NFL player, is in a little bit of controversy and out in Big Blue. Now, I have a few mutual friends that are diehard Big Blue fans and aren't the happiest at this moment. But it is what it is. So what I'm talking about here, if you haven't been paying attention, is the Big Ten has suspended Jim Harbaugh, for 3 games. Now, I find this to be funny because I'm hearing Michigan fans cry about it. But he is literally suspended just for the games and not suspended throughout the weeks.
So really?
Throughout the week,
I didn't know that. Oh, jeez.
Throughout the week, he can stay and coach the team. But for the games, he cannot be there at the games.
So he's not like in a press box or something? He's not. He's at home?
Nope.
Okay.
He's not there. Can't go with the team. Can't be there. The first game of this 3-game suspension was against Penn State this past weekend, but they didn't need him. Just like Penn State doesn't need James Franklin. But they won, and they won in a phenomenal fashion for Big Blue, and I thank them as a Penn State fan because they need to show what James Franklin does not do when it's time to show up to big games. I look at him as the Brandon Staley of college football, at least for the Big Ten, and definitely for Penn State.
That's really funny. When you sent me over the weekend some awful James Franklin stats, and my reaction was initially, I think Keegan-Michael Key would be a better James Franklin than James Franklin because he does such a good impersonation. Yeah.
At this point, I would
we should try that.
They went on to fire their offensive coordinator after the game as if it's the offensive coordinator's fault.
Yeah, it's clearly his fault. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, great.
Cool.
But anyway, back to Jim. So that is the first game. I forgot who they play Maryland this weekend, which Michigan should blow them out. And then the third game suspension is against Ohio State, which is, as we know, is a huge game with playoff implications for sure. So to run back why this is such a big situation, a young man of Connor Stallions, or that's how you say it. I'm assuming it's his last name. He apparently ran an in-person scouting operation. So there's videos of this young man that is apparently a part of the Michigan coaching staff on other teams' sideline, dressed in their garb. So the other team's hat, wearing sunglasses, headsets, or whatever, and picking up their signs and being behind it and relaying it. Essentially, what is rumored to be, there's no proof that he's relaying it back to the other side, but apparently that's what he's doing so because he works on the Michigan for Michigan.
Wait,
now,
he's standing on the sidelines, or I thought he was sitting in the stands.
Sam, you
I thought
he paid attention. No,
he's been. No. He's on the sidelines.
On the sidelines on the opposite team, wearing their hat, wearing sunglasses, blending in with.
So this was the shoe I was waiting the other shoe to drop. This was it. Okay, this doesn't make sense. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So he's been on the other sidelines and apparently at other games doing something very similar and so on and so forth. Because as we know, if you've never paid attention, there's a ton of people that stand on a sideline during a college football game, which I'm sure now after this, I guarantee next year they're going to check a lot of credentials and make sure that everybody has and is a part of the team in order to be on the sidelines going forward. But this is what has apparently happened now. So a lot of people were complaining, like, why is this falling on Jim? Well, it always falls on the head coach. If the players are out and they have a cheating schedule and their cheating operation for their grades and whatnot, and the coach doesn't know about it, guess who it falls on? It falls on the coach because you're responsible for the team. Whatever happens under your umbrella, even though whether it's fair or not fair, it comes back to you.
If you want all the praise and the glory, like that's what it is. It's you. If you want it to be your program, it's your program.
Yep.
And you just got to be responsible for your program.
And this is where we are. So that is what is happening. So it's kind of a do you care? Genuinely, I do care. Because of the implications it has on the Big Ten in itself. But then also on the college playoffs. And I also care because I'm curious what's going to happen to Jim, because Jim, every offseason in the past 4 to 5 years since leaving, or it's probably a little bit more, since leaving San Fran, he's flirted with the NFL like every offseason.
Right.
Now, also a funny thing, Sam, is prior to when apparently this cheating started, they had a terrible record against Ohio State. They weren't beating Ohio State. And then apparently it started changing when this operation started.
I was going to say
Ryan Day sucks, but that's also a fact that adds to it too. But that's when they're saying that it actually is going into that. Now, I'm not saying this as a Penn State fan. I'm just intrigued to seeing how this plays out, because I'm curious what other information they have or don't have that they're not showing us. And it also is very interesting that they have pushed this issue to get resolved quicker, because these situations normally take years to get resolved.
Sure.
And they're trying to get this done. They've come down with this within a couple of weeks. So yeah, do you care about this? I guess, Sam.
I care because if you're trying so hard to cover up something that should be normal, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
and it just kind of comes down to that. I mean, if you're standing on second base and you see that your pitcher is tipping his pitches, and you know when a curveball is going to come, and you tap your nose to the guy at home, and he knows that a breaking ball is coming, that's picking up on tendencies and different things. Yep. And that's what I thought. And when we first talked about this a couple weeks ago, and certainly not knowing, and you knowing more of like the news that has happened since, like, okay, we'll see what this is. But if you're going out of your way to get an advantage like that, then there's something wrong. If you're just kind of looking at sequences and different things to kind of factor what is going to happen, that's fine. That's sports. But when you're standing on the other team's sidelines and I don't even know how you're able to get that clearance, but I've run many live events in my time. It's very easy to get where you're not supposed to be, no matter how much security you hire. So, I understand it. It's just, do I care? Yeah. I think it's kind of amusing the like like this like battle cry of like, we're being wronged and we'll like, we're going to win anyway. It's very interesting that when finally, after years and years of Jim Harbaugh underperforming at his alma mater, he's finally having some success, and it comes with this caveat. So that's all very interesting. Do I care? Yes. Do I really care? No. Like, it sucks. I shouldn't be allowed, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's because I'm not really a Big Ten fan, or a college football fan, but I can understand why a lot of people are upset about it, and I would be too.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm curious to see more about it. I know there'll be a lot coming out over the years. So again, stealing signs is a part of the game. If because I know they're still, they haven't flat out said that was him on the sideline, but it looks 100% like this man being on the sideline dressed up this way.
Has he said anything?
No, he's resigned though. He just flat out resigned. I don't think there's been a statement from him.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's just very intriguing to see what is transpiring, and I guess we'll just have to continue and wait and see what happens from this point going forward.
So he's not banned from any postseason play. He's just banned the next 3 games or 2 games, if you will.
Yep.
Interesting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So
and we'll see if there's more that happens, but at this point, that's it. 3-game suspension.
So he'll be back for like the title, not the national title game, but the conference title game, I'd imagine.
Yep.
So okay.
Yep. So essentially, he's just got a 3-day vacation.
I saw Micah Parsons laugh at the interim coach or whoever it was after he was like crying. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, I'm just gonna say this.
Okay, go ahead.
I love my Penn State guys, but Micah has continuously made it harder and harder to like him, because I don't know if you saw what he did. If you're not aware, he has a podcast that is sponsored by Bleacher Report. Yeah, everybody does.
Man,
but it's also, by the way, that's also kind of annoying too. I don't need to hear from you or every player after their game on their podcast of what they thought went wrong or what they didn't. I don't listen to any of those podcasts because I just purposely don't want to hear what you thought could have went your way or not. And on the last podcast that Micah had after they lost, he had Stephon Gilmore on there, and he was complaining about the refs and said that there needs to be more refs on the field because they missed so many other plays. So Micah, without you actually saying it, you essentially said that we needed the refs to win that game, because without that, we wouldn't. Without those calls, we lost those games because of those calls. So you're saying that you couldn't have beat the Eagles without the calls. You don't realize that you're saying this because you're not trained in a certain way to say certain things, but you don't realize by not saying the other part, that's what you're saying. And you're complaining about the refs. Now, Sam, if we all know that there's a hold on every play in the NFL.
Every play, ever.
There's a pass interference on every play in the NFL. It's just if they catch it or they decide to call it. And also, new thing that they've been doing this year is that they've been picking up the flags, right? Which a lot of people absolutely hate that they're doing it, because they're getting together and they're like, well, it's not that, it's not this. But again, it's always going to be, depending on what team you favor, it's going to be a good or a bad thing. So let's just get over it as fans. It is what it is. And as players, do more than. If you don't want the game to be in the refs' hands, this is a historical statement that has been said for years. If you don't want the game to come down to the refs, don't leave the game in the refs' hands. Period.
I say the same thing about kickers. And again, 5 game-winning kicks yesterday, and a lot of people are like, man, we played 60 minutes. It shouldn't come down to a kicker. Don't let it come down to the kicker.
Yep.
It's a swear, you've won just as many of these games throughout your sports life than you've lost by a kicker too. There's
a reason why there's kickers a part of the game, is because they mean something to the game.
Kickers are people too.
Yeah.
Except in fantasy, I'm fine without having kickers.
Well, yeah, there's that.
I'll die on that hill.
Oh, gosh. Well, Sam, close us out, man.
Hey, man. Episode 115 of the Chasing Points podcast is in the books. Thank you so much for listening, for watching on YouTube, and you can check out our live stream about 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time every Monday or around there. And the podcast drops Tuesday morning before you even wake up. And thanks so much for listening. Check us out on Instagram at Chasing Points Podcast. For Brandon, I'm Sam. Thanks so much for listening. Until next week, peace.
Hey, Mom, I know you're not going to listen to this because you never listen to my podcast, but I know you support me anyway. But happy birthday. I have to always bust her chops. But happy birthday, Mom. My mom's birthday is on Sunday. I love you to death. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. Most importantly, bringing me into this world to annoy people like Sam. So I appreciate you so much for that. I love you and everything that you have taught me how to be a man and how to treat women alike and how to treat them as if they were you. And I appreciate that so much because it's taught me so much and allowed me to grow. But also on another side note, just it's we're approaching the holiday season very steadily. I know we're technically in it now. We're only a few weeks away from Thanksgiving, but just take the time to be thankful for what you have and not for what you don't have, because you have a lot of things that you've worked hard to get, and I know at times it's easy to overlook the things that you've actually worked to get, and that you actually have. And it's more than some people have ever had the opportunity to have that stepped on this earth and were able to breathe air on this earth. So don't take it for granted. Understand what your victories are. Understand what you have been able to achieve. And yes, it does not mean to stop striving for greatness and get and reach the full potential of what you have. But take a second to pause and be thankful, as I have begun to do more and more and more in recent memory. And I'm super thankful for even having an opportunity to say this and for people outside of Sam and myself to just hear me speak, whether it's here or my other podcasts or any other place that I have an avenue to talk to people. So just wanted to share that. Be super thankful. I thank you guys for listening to this podcast. Thank you, Sam. And yeah, let's keep it going.